Few things in this wasteland are as impressive as the T-45d power armor. While it may be one of the weakest sets of powered combat infantry armor, it is still an engineering masterpiece far stronger than most armors forged in the wastes of the old world. Join me in today's broadcast as we explore the history of the very first power armor ever created.
There are tales littered all across the wastelands of the old world. Within these tales are secrets, knowledge, and legends waiting to be told. I've traversed the boneyards of once great cities to collect these chronicles of post-apocalyptia. Some of these stories are beyond logical reasoning. Are these just radiation-poisoned brains conjuring up these myths, or is there some truth to be found in them? Only you can decide, as we step into the haze of Wastelord's legends.
During the Sino-American War, America was facing heavy casualties and needed a far more mobile mode of transporting troops and their heavy equipment, so they contracted the leading company in weapon development, Westech. Westech immediately began working on a revolutionary concept, power armor. This idea was put in development in August 2065 and was deployed 2 years later in 2067. The first model of this new concept was deemed the T-45d. It was a marvel of ingenuity, and it revolutionized American warfare, and unbeknownst to its creators, it would also be a staple of wasteland militias and lucky scavengers. While the short timeline of this model's design may have been a huge help to soldiers on the front line, it came with a price. Because the armor was the first of its kind, it unfortunately had some flaws that plagued it, such as being less mobile than later models, weaker resistance to physical and energy attacks, and a weak point just below the chest weld in the stomach area. While there are a few flaws in this suit, it's still an excellent choice for protection in the wasteland. It may be easy to cast this armor down due to its flaws, but looking at them closer, it becomes clear that these are only minor issues. The first being the lacking mobility. While it is less mobile than other suits, it's still perfectly mobile for users with training, and it isn't just a slow, immovable tank. When it comes to the weaker resistances, these are only compared to other sets of power armor that came after years of testing, and it is still amazing protection in the wasteland. The last weakness of this armor that also carried over to the T-60 model was the weak point under the chest weld. This may seem like a huge deal, however it appears as only high armor piercing rounds will be able to do the trick. Not only that, but one would also have to have the knowledge of this flaw, which is most likely how the NCR was able to take over Helios 1 from the Brotherhood, as after the battle the NCR was able to salvage the T-45 suits, and the remaining Brotherhood survivors were left using the far superior T-51b, which doesn't have this weak point. Moving on to the strengths and benefits of the T-45d, there are many features that make this suit special. Firstly, as with all sets of power armor, it has a hydraulic frame that gives the user incredible strength, oxygen tanks, and protection from falls of very high magnitudes. Another benefit of power armor is the ability for the user to carry heavy weapons without a squad, essentially allowing them to be a one-man army. The helmet of the armor features a targeting system, rangefinder, a headlight, a ballistic glass visor, a voice modulator, comms system, and an air filter. While there is less information on the T-45 when compared to the T-51, I have located a Brotherhood schematic showing what the armor features. From this, we can see that the armor features a titanium armor plating, a heat shield, radiation scrubbers, a Pip-Boy HUD integration, and in the stomach area there is a flexible armor reinforced with kinetic dampeners. After serving for an impressive 9 years, the suit was beginning to be phased out for the new T-51b, as China had become effective at stopping the T-45. The armor would now be used on American soil, such as for the Coast Guard and law enforcement, and an original suit was even going to be displayed in the Museum of History by 2078. However, by 2077, none of these models of power armor had succeeded in defending the United States, as the wars for which they were created for consumed all and brought a new age to history, the post-war. In this new chapter of humankind's tale, this armor found its calling as the protection, strength, and radiation scrubbers became a vital key in wasteland survival. Those lucky enough to find and operate this suit became nearly unstoppable when compared to the roaches and raiders of post-apocalyptia. Primarily worn by the Brotherhood of Steel, This suit has saved many lives carrying out the will of the Brotherhood. During the NCR Brotherhood War, the new California Republic became effective at taking out the suits, much like the Chinese 200 years earlier, and were actually able to salvage the sets. However, due to the NCR lacking knowledge of operating them, the suits were gutted of their servo motors, making them available for anyone to wear, with the cost of mobility and speed. They also removed the pauldrons to identify friendlies. A much more effective variant of this power armor, only seen being worn by the Lone Wanderer at one point in his journey, was the T-47b prototype medic power armor. This armor has a drill sergeant voice system and injects the user with medics when they get injured, keeping the user in the fight. While the T-45d certainly isn't the best suit of power armor out there in the wasteland, it sure is an amazing piece of equipment that many wasteland legends have used before. So next time you see a Brotherhood soldier in one, be sure to look at it with respect. Because after all, it was made for war over 200 years ago. And unlike NCR taxes, war never changes. Thank you all for watching this broadcast. If you like this video, give it a like and subscribe, as I will be going over every Power Armor's lore in the Fallout universe. And with all that out of the way, thank you channel members, and may the wasteland treat you with peace and prosperity. War. War never changes. Battles do, through the technology that is used. From bronze to steel to Kevlar, mankind has always developed ways to protect themselves from their biggest enemy, each other. But in the 21st century, everything changed when Westech created the first set of powered combat infantry armor, or power armor. The T-45 was the first of this deadly invention, and while it had many flaws, such as being less mobile and defensive as the later models, it was still leagues above any other armor that was previously seen on the battlefield. After 9 years of designing and testing, the latter of which being tested at Fort Strong, the T-51b model of power armor was deployed on June 2076 in China, and performed significantly better than its counterpart, the T-45. This suit was so impressive that there were even some cases in which Chinese troops immediately surrendered at the sight of the 7'3" metal giants wielding miniguns. This armor also saw combat in Canada against insurrectionists, as well as in Alaska during the Chinese occupation, ending an 11-year war almost immediately, due to the mechanized armored suits. The T-51 was designed with the intention of doing everything the T-45 couldn't, such as offering greater protection, better stability through gyroscopic stabilizers, and shock absorbers. One of the best aspects of this armor is its mobility and strength, and despite it being more resistant to attacks than the T-45, its design made it much lighter, and therefore faster on the battlefield. Looking at the overall design of the armor, it is round almost all over the suit, from the head to the pauldrons to the chest piece. While this looks great aesthetically, it also helps deflect attacks, as rather than hitting a flat surface with maximum power, they are instead deflected, reducing kinetic deliverance, which protects the user furthermore. The visor of the armor is bullet resistant, meaning it is very strong, but a well-placed shot with a higher caliber, such as one from a rifle, can kill the user. This armor features a headlight, an air filtration system for hazardous environments, radiation protection, a rangefinder, a comm system, a waste filtration system, a gyroscopic stabilizer, and protected oxygen tanks, with many optional additions including, but not limited to, a jetpack, a targeting HUD, and an internal database. While many believe that due to how they are named, the T-60 is the better suit of armor. However, there are some things to consider. Firstly, the T-51b has significantly greater resistances to both physical and electrical attacks, although it has a much weaker resistance to radiation in comparison, even being weaker than the T-45 in terms of protection against rads. The T-51 also has been claimed as the pinnacle of pre-war power armor. The reason T-60 is more common, however, is simply due to it being much easier to produce, therefore making it a favorable choice of a collapsing nation with dwindling resources, as well as the Brotherhood of Steel. Another reason the T-51 is more advanced is it isn't built upon an existing model like the T-60, which has many of the weaknesses of the T-45, such as its stomach area being a significant weak point.
There was a flaw in the welding, just below the chest plate. I wonder if they fix that in this new model. I guess not.
An entry from the Zax computer located in the West Tech Research Facility in California states the suit was made of the latest polylaminate composite. The T-51b shell is lightweight and capable of absorbing over 2,500 joules of kinetic impact. The 10-micron silver ablative coating can reflect laser and radiation emissions without damage to the composite subsurface. As someone who has spent my fair share of time in this model, as well as someone who has worked on this suit, I can confirm that this information is true, despite causing controversies between scribes and other wannabe researchers. As the statement makes clear, this armor can absorb the kinetic energy from an attack of more than 2,500 joules, not that it can only withstand 2,500 joules of energy from an attack. This means that if the armor didn't have this, an attack such as from a 50 cal, which has a much higher energy output than 2,500 joules, will be stopped by the armor, but would still kill the user inside due to the energy output. Much like most armor, it's not hard to stop a bullet, but it's rather about absorbing the lethal shock from the impact. For instance, an armor plate or piece of combat armor can stop a 50 caliber bullet from penetrating. However, this doesn't really matter, as the impact would still kill the user wearing the armor, due to the power armor's subsurface being able to absorb over 2,500 joules of kinetic impact. The wearer can easily survive this attack. Think of this subsurface as a shock absorber underneath the steel armored exterior. Many scribes and wastelanders may argue with this explanation, believing the armor itself can only stop small arms fire. However, this is simply untrue, because this statement calls the polylaminate composite the subsurface of the armor. Therefore, it isn't this armor itself. So when discussing the T-51, there is the power armor frame, which can be powered by a fusion core. Then there's the polylaminate composite shell, which works as an underlayer for the armor pieces. And then there's the armor, which can be attached to the frame. And lastly, the 10-micron silver ablative coating. Some evidence to support this is that if one were to believe that the shell is the armor itself, despite the text saying otherwise, then the armor wouldn't be able to stop calibers such as .308, despite combat armor being able to do so, as well as much thinner steel being able to do the same thing. And if one were to claim that the armor doesn't contain steel, as it is a polylaminate composite, this would also be untrue, as the armor can rust, and it requires a hefty amount of steel to craft and to repair. In the post-war remains of America, this suit is idolized for its impressive stats, gorgeous visuals, and its ability to dominate on the battlefield. It is primarily used by the Brotherhood of Steel, although as of recently they have been transitioning to their own modified suits of T-60, likely due to it being easier to produce as well as standardize, making training far easier. As for me, I will choose the T-51b over any other model, not because it is the reason Anchorage was liberated or that it was worn by the one who defeated the Master, not even because it is one of the strongest pre-war variants, but simply because it is so damn sexy. Folks, that's going to do it for today's broadcast. If you enjoyed, be sure to like and subscribe, as I will be covering each set of powered combat infantry armor, as they are the reason I became enthralled with Fallout. Thank you all so much for your continued support, channel members, and with all of that out of the way, may the Wasteland treat you with peace and prosperity. One of the most commonly seen suits of power armor in the Wasteland, partly thanks to the Brotherhood of Steel, is the T-60 model of power armor. And despite it being one of the most produced and popular units out there, its history has been lost to time. Although the lore of this armor hasn't yet been fully recorded, I will do my best to present all the known information on this model. While it is unknown exactly when the T-60 was created, I estimate it was after June of 2076 and before October of 2077. I chose this time area as the T-51b was deployed in June of 2076 and the T-60 was actively fighting by October 23, 2077. While the T-60 model was the most recent and produced power armor pre-war, it certainly wasn't the pinnacle, as that title belongs to the T-51, which is stronger in all regards except for radiation protection. The reason for it being made, however, wasn't to compete with the impressive T-51, but rather because it was far easier to mass produce, making it the standard issue for America to manufacture with their limited resources. In the Wasteland, the primary user of this armor is the Brotherhood of Steel, as after their war with the Enclave in the capital Wasteland in 2277, they gained access to the Enclave's manufacturing resources and were then able to mass produce their power armor of choice, the T-60. By 2087, the East Coast Brotherhood of Steel had completely phased out all of their power armor suits from their ranks in favor of using one standard set of armor, which means maintenance, training, and upgrading can be much more seamless, Yet it does mean identification has to be done so through color and insignia rather than through different suits. Moving on to the armor itself, it has many features of its predecessor, the T-45. Due to the design of the armor, it is safe to assume that many of the features of the T-45 are included in this model as well, such as the radiation scrubbers under the chest piece, as well as its weakness in the same area as the T-45, just under the chest's welded area. While this flaw can be fatal, it almost always isn't detrimental, as almost no Wastelanders know about this flaw, nor do they have the armament to utilize this weak point, and those that do know seem to keep this secret to themselves, such as experienced Brotherhood members. Despite the suit's Achilles heel, it is an absolute mechanical menace, and due to its thick armor, it is far stronger than the T-45d. Much like the power armors that came before it, the T-60 is worn on top of a power armor frame, and is therefore capable of eliminating fall damage, holding serious amounts of gear, and has oxygen tanks. The armor itself includes radiation scrubbers, a headlight, a comm system, an air filter, a rangefinder, a voice modulator, and a Pip-Boy HUD integration system linked to the power armor frame. Looking at the armor itself, it is very rigid and has rings on its pauldrons, much like the T-45, which allows for easier transportation and deployment. A little known fact about this armor that is included in the T-51b is it has a waste filtration system, which allows the users to drink their pee in needed circumstances. By 2296, 9 years after the Brotherhood's arrival in the Commonwealth, they had developed and deployed their own variant of T-60, which had many improvements over the original model. Visually, the power armor looks identical, except for the helmet. It looks more like a mix of T-45 and T-60. The helmet is shorter, thicker, and has a much wider visor, and the flashlight is lower on the helmet. While it certainly doesn't look as cool, it is actually more useful than the original helmet. For instance, the visors being bigger may sacrifice a negligible amount of safety, but it offers far more vision to the user, allowing them to hit more targets and just see better in general. The helmet being shorter just means it's more compact and harder to hit. But the most useful aspect of this helmet has to be its ability to open its faceplate, allowing the user to be unencumbered by the helmet's presence while still being far safer than removing it. This is historically important to the Brotherhood, as their soldiers tend to wear their armor without their helmets, which isn't safe in combat, and is how their first leader, Roger Maxson, was killed, as he was grazed in the neck by a poison-tipped arrow. The armor also features a mount for the Brotherhood's T-60 pistol, allowing the user a ranged weapon when in need. The most impressive upgrade to this power armor, however, is the flight capability the Brotherhood added to the suit. The arms of the suit now have rockets that allow for impressive flight without the hindrance of a jetpack on the back of the armor. While aerial warfare isn't possible due to the location of the propulsion systems, it does allow the user to cover great distances or scale hard-to-reach areas, as well as perform sneak attacks from above. While the standard model is by no means a better suit than the T-51b, it certainly has its benefits, such as being easier to standardize and produce, as well as just looking good. If you are ever able to get your hands on one of these suits, be sure to learn how to operate it, and once you are able to do that, stay away from any pre-war ghouls, as you never know which one of them knows its weakness. Thank you all so much for watching this broadcast. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and consider subscribing, as I will be making every Power Armor's lore and covering them all and doing all that cool stuff, including like Power Armors from Fallout 76, like the Atomic Shop, because like the Vertiguard Power Armor, like you expect me not to cover that? That looks so sick. We're going to be doing that for sure. And yeah, so if you guys want to subscribe, do so, because I'll be making more. And with all that said, may the Wasteland treat y'all with peace and prosperity.